Cliff Richard, how are you?
Hi, Alex, I'm fine, thank you very much.
It's really nice to talk to you again. We seem to be doing this every year now, and every year you have a new album, and it does gangbusters, and your fans still love you even more and more and more. It must be great being you.
It is nice being me, actually, and it's one of those things that everyone for years and years now has thought that I kind of own Christmas, as though I'm the only person that releases a record. What no one seems to understand is that the reason why everybody and their mother records and releases records at this time is because between October and December, there are probably more sales than there are in the rest of the year. I mean, I know everything's changing because of downloading. Maybe downloading happens all the time, but the big hit records always happen at this period. And that's why people like myself, you know, who are trying to make money for our record companies as well as ourselves, as well as songwriters, as well as musicians, we record and release things for this period.
I could be wrong, but I suspect that money isn't your main incentive in releasing a new album. Is it giving something back to your fans when you release one each year?
Well, it's a bit of everything, really. When I first started my career, I have to say, the reason why I started was strictly because I loved rock and roll. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran. Remember Eddie Cochran? So it was strictly for that. What happened is slowly as you become successful, you realize, oh, I'm having a fantastic time and they're paying me and they're paying me well. And so suddenly the money comes into it. So yeah, I have to be honest and say, I do it for all the reasons. And as I get older, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, I'm in a business where, unlike a lot of businessmen, I have a lot of friends who are businessmen, and sometimes their money comes in and they haven't done anything, because someone else has sold something for them, you know what I mean? Whereas I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, at this age, I only earn if I do it myself, if I actually go and physically do it myself. That has to come to an end sometime. But no, with an album like this, the pleasure was that EMI wanted to release a compilation of my successful love songs. And they said to me, what about if you could record 4 or 5 songs that you've always wanted to do but haven't recorded before? And I love that kind of challenge because there are so many songs that I wish I'd got first. And so I chose 5 songs that I really, really loved, and I did them. And the danger of that is, of course, is that you find yourself in competition with some classic recordings. Because I chose some real fabulous records, I think. The originals were so good. So what I try to do is make them my own. And when we finished the tracks, my engineer and I were in Barbados together, and I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, I have to say this. They do sound like Cliff Richard records. So I thought, great. And that's all you can do, you know, because sometimes you can't, even in people's minds, the original record, like for instance, my Move It. People keep saying, no one's ever done Move It like you. Well, that's very nice. Some of them may have done it better than me, but what they remember is their first hearing of that song in a particular time in their life, and that remains their favorite version. And that's true of the songs I've chosen to do. I don't know whether mine are better than anybody else's, but I'd like to think that they pay respects to a song and artists who have done a fantastic job having hits.
What fascinates me about this business is no matter how big you are, no matter how successful you are, or how long you've been doing it, you still have to go out and promote your records and let people know you're there. It's odd, isn't it? Because you've got such a massive fan base, yet you still got to tell them there's a new album out.
Yes, and it's even more so now because we all know, but the problems with radio is that I guess radio's just not big enough for all of us. So some of us have got dumped. And that's okay. There's nothing you can do about that. People play what they want to play. Fortunately for me, I do get played around. There's lots of regional BBC stations, gold stations that play me. But when you have a hit, you have to. Let me tell you this: when Millennium Prayer was out and it was number 1 and sold 1.4 million CDs in 5 weeks. I think I was told I had 400 plays that week, and I thought that was terrific. Then I discovered that other records were being played 2,000 times. Now that's the difference. So I can't expect that, and I don't expect that anymore. So I have to do much more in the way of interviews or television shows just to get myself heard. Because even if you're going to get a download, why would someone download you if they don't know you've got something out? So you're back to radio again. Radio is still, for me, radio and rock and roll. When I first started, radio and rock and roll were hand and glove together. I made records firstly for me, secondly for radio, and thirdly, if the public liked it, that was a fantastic icing on the cake. And the radio's been taken away from me. As you say, my fans have been loyal. And I still now have to aim my music, though. I'm planning to do an album of standards next year, stuff that I've actually tried out with the fans on stage. And they turned out to like all the stuff that I did by Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hart. And so I've got about 15 tracks that I'm preparing, and I'll go in and do that, because you see, that doesn't need a great deal of airplay. When I heard Rod Stewart's, the songbook, the American Songbook, which I loved his songbook stuff. The first time I heard It Had to Be You, and I thought, that sounds like Rod Stewart, but it can't be. Then Michael Parkinson said, and that was Rod Stewart. I went straight out and bought the album, no doubt about it. I didn't need to hear any more, because Michael Parkinson said this album is just all this kind of music. So if I make the right album, and if it's good enough, we'll release it. And if people hear me singing, I don't know, one of those standards, then they'll know what's on there. And by the way, Rod wasn't the first. Even though I loved his tracks, I suddenly thought, why don't I do it? Then I thought, wait a minute, I did do this. I dug back to 1962, and I looked up 2 albums, listened to Cliff and one other, Cliff Sings. And on it, there are 8 tracks on each album, and I sing all those old standards. So you see, that was 62, Rod. I did it years ago, but I have to say I loved that. I play that music in Portugal and Barbados when I'm sunbathing. Rod's always on my, one of the CD jukebox setups. I haven't really quite got into the iPod. I find the iPod is going to take too much music, and I like to change my tracks. I like to change my CDs every other day. So I have it on for 2 days, and then I like to go through my hundreds of CDs going, ooh, I haven't heard that for ages, and play that.
Now, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Scylla. I just did an hour special with her. She gave me some juicy secrets about you. We're going to talk about the new album, of course. We're also going to talk about what it's like being you today. We're here at Television Centre at the moment, the day we're taping this. You're about to go on national TV, BBC One primetime tonight, and you're so calm and collected. We're also going to talk about the new album, of course, and I think it's unique, I think it's different, and I think it's really, really nice and listenable. So congratulations on that, because there's a lot of rubbish out at the moment, isn't there?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's I don't know, but unique's a difficult word to use these days, because it's only unique in that I'm the only one that's released this album. That makes it unique. But in terms of the musical structure of it all, it's not unique, because there are other people who do similar kinds of songs. And in the end, I've always felt that really the music, the pop world, is bigger than any of us. It is like a huge supermarket. And on every shelf, there's Cliff Richard or Celine Dion or George Michael or Paul McCartney, all the names you can think of. And people sometimes go to my track and pick it out, and sometimes go somewhere else. But, these kind of albums have a place because they capture a mood, and because we've gone for the love songs. And also I've tried to make sure that the tempos change a little too. There are a couple of tracks that have a little bit more beefy feel to it. And of course, my favorite song on the whole album, though, was not mine originally. People ask me what I think of contemporary writers and singers, and I said, well, I hear a lot of good singers and bands, but they don't seem to last. Whereas Daniel Bedingfield is still around. And I just, when I first heard If You're Not the One, I got goosebumps. Now, I do not get goosebumps anymore. I hear records that I like. I hear records and think, wow, listen to that drum and bass. Everything's fantastic. But I don't find the songs particularly memorable. I'm generalizing. Of course, there are the occasions. And then this occasion comes, and I thought, Daniel Bedingfield, he's done it again. He wrote this wonderful song, and it gave me goosebumps. And as I said earlier, the thing is to try and make it your own. And so I just did it my way. I put it in my key. I still got my height. I still got the top note. It's a different note to his, but it's in my pitch. And I love the effect of it. I love doing it. I don't know whether he's heard it yet, so I'm hoping that sometime along the line I'm going to get a call. He calls me occasionally, that I'm going to get a call saying, what a load of crap. It's not high for me because I chose the note that I could go do comfortably. I can go higher than that in the falsetto, but then it could sound a little strained. And so that's the wonderful thing about music. In rock and roll in particular, is a totally free art form. If I was an opera singer, I would have to sing the operas in the keys that they were written. And I know that for a fact because I've met Placido Domingo and I've met Dame Kiri Takano, and that's what they told me. You've got to sing it in. She said I've got to hit this high D. I can't take it down a tone. So that if you take the key down, you still sing all the notes written, but in a different key that suit you. So if You're Not the One, I just moved it to down a tone or something like that from what Daniel did, because he's got a high voice. He has a naturally high voice. His low notes are not as low as mine, and my high notes can't be as high as his. So I just made it mine.
It's interesting with Daniel, isn't it? He's only really known for that song, If You're Not the One. Robbie's only really known for Angels. Do you have to be careful as an artist that you might just get tagged to one song? Because when I think of you, I think of so many songs. Move It, Summer Holiday, Congratulations.
Well, no, I wouldn't worry about it, and I don't think they should. It doesn't matter if you're attached to a fantastic song. You know, I mean, I love the fact people always, you know, they knock Congratulations. And I said, but do you realize it's one of the biggest selling records I've ever had? And do you realize that at every birthday party and anniversary or something that people are celebrating, they'll tend to sing happy birthday and or congratulations. And I'm thinking, what a great connection. I'll never be forgotten because of that song. So if you've had your angel, if you're not the one, and everyone remembers you for that, how fantastic can that be? Because they're both great songs. But you see, the guys haven't been around as long as I have, and that's where I have the benefit. Not that I'm any better than they are, not that I don't know, whatever you want to think. It's just that I've been doing it a long time. So therefore, I went through a period where I sang just nothing but out and out rock and roll. So I've got all the Move It's and the High Class Babies, and then I went through the ballads, and I've got the All in the Games, and then I got the movies with the Summer Holidays and the Young Ones. And so therefore, as time goes by and progresses, you find that you may not have number ones all the time, but you have them quite often, and that's all it takes. I remember having this conversation with Daniel Bedingfield once when he asked me, he was very new on the scene, he'd had 3 number ones, I think, on a trot. I've never had 3 number ones on the trot. And he said, how many number ones have you had? And I said, about 14, I think. And he said, is that all? I said, Daniel, is that all? Do you realize how hard that is? 14 number ones. And he said, well, I've had 3 already. And he said, and one of them I didn't think was very good. So I said, well, just be prepared. If you have a number 2, please do not think it's a failure. It's not. My career is what it is because I've had 36 top 5s, because I've had 120 top 20s and 14 number 1s. And that's what makes your career. That's what it gives a whole bunch of people choices of songs that they will remember for all sorts of reasons. So I always like to say to people who are kicking out, don't be pushed. You know, again, they need the support of record companies. I remember when I first started, my first record was number 2. It wasn't number 1. Move It went to 2. High Class Baby went to number 7. Living, Loving Doll went to 17. In the meantime, I'm panicking, and Norrie Paramore, my producer, was saying, don't worry, we'll find the right song for you. Sure enough, Living Doll, bam, number 1. Traveling Light, bam, number 1. Those are my 2 number 1s on the trot. I've never done it again.
Isn't it more of a numbers game now, though? You only need about 20,000 to get a number 1 today. In your day, you needed about 250,000.
Yeah, it is. And that's where, in fact, that's where we benefit, because it's never going to change back, I don't think. Not with downloads. And unless we start getting millions of downloads, no, that's never going to happen again. So that's why when I won that Ultimate Pop Star thing, you know, they did a TV, it wasn't a vote or anything. They actually counted up all the singles released in Britain and how many singles each one of us who had released singles here had sold. I was so shocked. I cannot tell you, because once I knew they were doing it, I thought, well, I could be number 3, and I would have thought that Elvis and the Beatles would have beaten me. But they didn't. I was the ultimate pop star. I sold more singles in Britain than everybody else. So I was thrilled about that. But that again, how can that ever change? That was for the last 50 years, by the way. What happens in the next 50 years? I don't give a darn. That belongs to the new generation, and they can have it. Because this is how much it's changed and how quickly it's changed. In 1999, when I released Millennium Prayer, I know it was I don't know why it was so controversial. For me, it was an anthem that any religion could have sung. It didn't actually mention God or Jesus. It was just praying for a fabulous future together. And it sold 1.4 million in 5 weeks. Elvis, about 4 years ago, had some singles released, and he was number 1, and it sold 30,000. That's not Elvis's fault. It's just the industry had changed. In 4 years, it had changed so drastically. So, you know, I'm so glad I started when I did start. And I do wish people well, though, because obviously you have to keep looking to the future. You have to realize that the downloading is probably where we're going to go. I don't think that's the best thing, because people tend to download one track. Hello, if I want to buy a Bonnie Raitt record, I want it to be a whole album, because I love her. And even though I find my favorites on that album, after 2 or 3 months, my favorites have changed, and it's the one I like least that I now like at number 3 in my chart. And you get to know the artist much more. Getting the odd track, I don't know. Maybe that's the future and I've got to learn to live with it. But I mean, I'm already planning that when I do my tour next year, I've got a fantastic song written by a friend of mine who wrote Saviour's Day and Little Town for me, the Christmas hits. And he's written me this wonderful song. And I thought, what am I going to do? It's such a waste. I felt like saying to him, give it to someone else to record who can get downloads. And I thought, wait a minute, why don't I try? Why don't I just make one single? Just make this record and put it out during my tour and say, this is only available on a download, and see if I can make any impact. There again, I would have to tell them, or if I was really lucky and all the radio stations became really nice to me and decided for my 50th year they would all play that track and let everybody know that it was available, I could well have a download hit. But who knows? I'll keep trying.
And I'm sure you will. We're going to take another piece of music from the album in a second from now. You made me think of a question that my favourite interviewer asked Pavarotti a few years ago, which is Larry King, and he said to him, how do you feel about the fact that you're going to be played long after you're gone? And I thought that was a tremendous question. How do you come to terms with the fact that your music will live on literally forever?
It doesn't bother me at all. Of course, that's one of the nice things if you've got a successful career, and I can't grumble about mine, can I? That there will be people that will be playing. I am part of musical history in Europe, and I know that rock and roll is an American art form, but it doesn't belong to them. And we've proved over the years that we can come alongside them and share charts with Americans and sometimes beat them. So for me to think, and after I'm dead and gone, that records of mine might be played is a fantastic feeling. What I'd love, though, is for them to say, Cliff Richard died at 105 last week, and do you remember this record? It was just last year that it was number 1. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Fingers crossed. We can make it happen if we get all our friends to do it together. We'll be back next with Sir Cliff Richard here on your favourite local radio station. I'm going to take my favourite song off the album. I still can't get over this track, Miss You Nights, which is just so moving and anthemic and beautiful. I think it's probably your best track ever, if I can be so bold.
No, you can be bold. I mean, I do think it's one of the best tracks ever that I've had. It's certainly one of the best ballads I've been given to sing. I'd mentioned about, if not for you giving me goosebumps when I heard Daniel's version of it first. I sat in the car going, it got under my skin. When Bruce Welch, who produced that track, brought it to me at my home, I had already got Devil Woman in my sweaty fist, wanting to record it, but thinking, how am I going to do this? People think of me as the man who sings Living Doll and Summer Holiday and stuff, and I've got She's Just a Devil Woman, but I wanted to do it. Now, Bruce came in with a whole bunch of songs. I played him Devil Woman. He said, fantastic. Then he said, listen to this. And he put on, a guy called Dave Townsend wrote the song, and he had recorded it for Island Records. And he played me Dave's version with all the harmonies that I do. His voice is different to mine, obviously. Well, we stood on the balcony of my home, and he said, look at me. And I said, look at me. Our arms were covered in goosebumps. And I just find that it doesn't happen to me as much anymore. But certainly with some of the songs that I've been given to sing, some of the songs that I've chosen them because they've had that effect on me. I had the same effect with some people. And there are a number of them that I feel, this is really special.